The moment Santiago told me to lean back, I felt a rush of something I couldn't name. As I reclined in the worn leather chair and his fingers brushed against my neck while adjusting the cape, my heart raced in a way it never had with any woman before, and that single touch from the confident Barber would set in motion events that would force me to question everything I believed about who I was. I had walked into his shop in downtown Los Angeles on a humid Tuesday afternoon just for a quick trim before my big presentation at the marketing firm. Nothing more. The place smelled of fresh citrus aftershave and leather polish, with old-school jazz playing softly from hidden speakers and sunlight streaming through the large front windows onto the polished tile floor. Santiago moved with easy precision, his dark wavy hair tied back and his rolled-up sleeves revealing toned forearms that spoke of years spent on his feet. "Just relax, Mateo," he said in that warm, steady voice with a faint accent that hinted at his Mexican roots. "Lean back all the way so I can get the sides right." I did as instructed, closing my eyes at first to avoid the bright overhead lights. But when I opened them again, his face was inches from mine as he worked the clippers along my jawline. Something in his steady gaze, kind yet intense, made my stomach tighten. I had always considered myself straight, engaged to Elena for 2 years now, with plans for a house in the suburbs and kids someday. My family back in San Diego expected nothing less. Yet here I was, hyper-aware of every small movement of his hands, the way his breath felt cool against my skin, and the quiet way he asked about my job like he genuinely cared. "You seem tense, man. Rough day?" he asked, pausing to switch tools. I mumbled something about work deadlines, but inside my mind spun. By the time he finished the fade and held up the mirror for me to check, I barely recognized the man staring back. Not because of the haircut, which looked sharp and professional, but because of the unfamiliar spark in my eyes. "Looks good," I said, paying and tipping more than usual. As I turned to leave, Santiago called out, "Hey, if you ever need a touch-up or just want to grab a coffee sometime, here's my card." No pressure. I took it without thinking, slipping it into my pocket like it was nothing. But that night, back in my apartment overlooking the city lights, I couldn't stop replaying the moment. Elena texted me about dinner plans, and I replied with the usual heart emoji. Yet my thoughts kept drifting to Santiago's easy smile and the way his touch had lingered just a second longer than necessary. I told myself it was nothing, just the stress of the job making me overthink. The next morning at work, my boss praised the fresh look, and I laughed it off, but deep down, a quiet unease settled in. Who was this guy who had rattled me with one simple command to lean back? I pulled out his card again during lunch, staring at the simple black text. Santiago Rivera, owner, Echo Barbershop. Something told me this wasn't the end of it. Days passed, and I found excuses to drive by the shop after meetings. One evening, rain pounding the streets, I finally stepped back inside, claiming I needed a beard trim. Santiago greeted me like an old friend, his laugh filling the empty shop. "Back so soon, Mateo? Must have liked the cut." We talked for an hour after closing, about everything from city life to family expectations. He shared how he had moved from a small town in Texas after coming out to his parents at 19, facing rejection that still stung years later. I listened, nodding, but inside I wondered why his story hit so close to home. My own parents had always pushed traditional values, and Elena fit perfectly into that picture. Yet as we shook hands goodbye, his palm warm against mine, I realized I was already looking forward to the next visit. The following weekend, Elena and I argued about wedding dates, her frustration bubbling over my distraction. I apologized, blaming work, but the truth was harder to admit even to myself. Santiago had planted a seed of doubt, one that grew with every passing thought. By the end of that month, our casual coffees had become regular, and I found myself opening up about pressures I had never voiced before. He listened without judgment, his presence steady like an anchor in the storm I didn't yet know was coming. Little did I realize how those conversations would lead to choices that would upend my entire world. Our talks stretched longer each time, turning the barbershop into a sanctuary where I could drop the mask I wore everywhere else. Santiago suggested we meet at a quiet cafe near the pier one Saturday morning, away from the clippers and the scent of pomade. The ocean breeze carried salt and freedom as we sat at an outdoor table, watching surfers ride the waves. "You know, Mateo, it's okay to not have all the answers," he said, stirring his black coffee. His eyes held that same intensity from the chair, but now it felt like a mirror reflecting parts of me I had ignored. I told him about my engagement to Elena, how her family and mine had practically planned our future since college, and the guilt that gnawed at me whenever I thought about calling things off. He nodded, sharing his own past with a relationship that ended because his partner couldn't handle the family's ongoing silence. "It took me years to stop apologizing for who I am," Santiago admitted, his voice steady but laced with old pain. "You don't have to rush anything. Just breathe." That afternoon, we walked along the beach, shoes in hand, the sand warm under our feet. Conversation flowed effortlessly, from favorite movies to dreams we had shelved. I laughed at his stories of early barbershop disasters, and he teased me about my corporate suits. For the first time in years, I felt seen, not just as the reliable son or fiancé, but as someone with layers worth exploring. Back home that evening, Elena noticed my lighter mood and pulled me into a hug. "You've been smiling more lately," she said, her voice hopeful. I kissed her forehead, but the gesture felt hollow. That night, alone in the guest room where I sometimes worked late, I replayed Santiago's words. Was this friendship or something more? The question haunted me through sleepless hours. Monday brought the first crack in my routine. At a family dinner in San Diego, my father grilled me about the wedding, reminding me how important it was to carry on the family name. My mother smiled supportively, but her eyes held the same expectations that had shaped my life. I smiled through it, mentioning work promotions to deflect, yet inside I wondered what they would say if they knew about these new feelings stirring for a man I barely knew a month ago. The drive back to Los Angeles gave me time to think. I texted Santiago a quick thanks for the weekend, and his reply came fast. "Anytime, brother. Doors always open. Brother." The word should have comforted me, but it twisted something deeper. Over the next weeks, our meetings became the highlight of my days. We hiked in the hills one Sunday, sweat and laughter mixing as we reached the viewpoint overlooking the city sprawl. Santiago pointed out landmarks, his arm brushing mine accidentally, and I didn't pull away. "Life's too short to live someone else's script," he said quietly as the sun dipped low. I wanted to argue, to defend the path I had always followed, but the words stuck in my throat. That evening, Elena called upset about missed plans, and I promised to make it up. Guilt weighed heavy, yet the pull toward Santiago grew stronger. He never pushed, never defined anything, just offered space for my thoughts to breathe. One night after a long shift at the shop, he invited me to help close up, and we ended up sharing pizza on the back steps under string lights. "You've got this quiet strength, Mateo," he told me, eyes reflecting the glow. "Whatever you're figuring out, I'm here." His words wrapped around me like a promise, and for the first time, I didn't fight the warmth spreading in my chest. The following day at work, a colleague joked about my new haircut looking sharper than ever, and I laughed, but my mind was elsewhere. Elena sensed the distance during our weekly date night, her questions probing gently. I brushed it off as stress, but the lie sat uneasy. Santiago's influence had opened a door I couldn't close, and every conversation with him chipped away at the walls I had built. By month's end, I realized I was no longer just getting haircuts. I was getting glimpses of a life that felt more authentic than anything I had known. The tension built slowly, like a current pulling me forward, and I wondered how long I could swim against it before everything changed. The cracks widened when my sister called from San Diego with news that our parents were planning a surprise engagement party. "They want everything perfect for you and Elena," she said excitedly. I forced enthusiasm, but my stomach knotted as I hung up. That weekend, Santiago and I drove to a quiet park in the hills for a hike, the city fading behind us. We talked about family expectations, his voice calm as he described the letters his parents still sent, laced with disappointment even after a decade. "I sacrificed holidays and closeness to be honest with myself," he said, pausing on a rocky overlook. "It hurt, but it freed me. I shared fragments of my own upbringing, the Catholic traditions and the unspoken rule that sons followed the path laid out." Elena's name came up, and Santiago listened without interruption, his presence steady. "You deserve to choose your happiness, Mateo," he added softly. Back in the car, silence settled comfortably until my phone buzzed with Elena's text about venue options. I stared at it, thumb hovering, and Santiago noticed. "Talk to her when you're ready," he advised. The drive home felt heavier, the weight of dual worlds pressing down. Monday at the office, I fumbled through meetings, my mind replaying our conversation. A colleague mentioned a new client project involving LGBTQ marketing campaigns, and I froze for a second too long, realizing how close the topic hit. That evening, Elena surprised me with dinner at home, her excitement about the party bubbling over. I smiled, holding her hand across the table, but the touch felt different now, like a reminder of the role I was supposed to play. Later, alone, I scrolled through photos from the hike, Santiago's laugh captured in one frame, and a quiet longing stirred. The next week brought family pressure to a head when my father visited unexpectedly for business. We grabbed lunch near my office, his questions direct as always. "When are you setting the date, son? Life doesn't wait." I nodded, promising to move things along, but inside the words rang false. That night, I met Santiago at the shop after hours for a simple trim, needing the routine to steady myself. As he worked, our talk turned deeper. He opened up about a past relationship that had taught him patience with those still figuring things out. "Everyone's timeline is their own," he said, his hands gentle on my shoulders. I left feeling lighter, yet the guilt toward Elena grew. The engagement party loomed, invitations sent, and I found myself avoiding calls. Santiago suggested a low-key movie night at his place to unwind, and I agreed, arriving with takeout. His apartment was simple, filled with books and plants, a far cry from my polished condo. We watched an old drama, sharing laughs and insights, and as the credits rolled, his hand rested near mine on the couch. Neither of us moved it. The moment passed quietly, but it lingered in my thoughts for days. Family dinner the following Sunday amplified the strain. My mother hugged me tight, whispering hopes for grandchildren, while my father toasted to tradition. Elena beamed beside me, her ring catching the light. I played the part, but inside I crumbled. Driving back, I pulled over on the freeway shoulder, tears unexpected. Santiago's text came right then, as if sensing it. "You okay? Door open if you need to talk." I replied honestly for the first time, admitting the pressure. His response was immediate and kind, offering to meet the next day. That cafe conversation became a turning point. We sat for hours, my words tumbling out about the party, the expectations, and the confusion that had me questioning my entire identity. Santiago didn't offer solutions, just listened and shared his own early struggles with acceptance. "You're not alone in this, Mateo," he said, his eyes steady. "Whatever you decide, it has to be for you." Walking out into the evening air, I felt a shift, the internal storm gaining strength. Elena noticed my distance that week, her questions turning pointed. I reassured her, but the words tasted like ash. The party was 2 weeks away, and I knew choices loomed larger than ever. Santiago's friendship had become my lifeline, pulling me toward truths I could no longer ignore. The confession came on a rainy Thursday evening when I showed up at the shop unannounced, soaked and unraveling. Santiago locked the door after his last client, brewed tea, and sat with me in the back room amid the quiet hum of the city outside. "I can't keep pretending," I said, voice cracking. "These feelings for you, for men in general, they're not going away." He didn't flinch, just nodded with that patient understanding that had drawn me in from the start. "I felt it too, Mateo. The way we connect, it's real." His words hung in the air, confirming what I had feared and hoped. We talked late into the night, unpacking years of denial on my part and his own journey of acceptance. He described the isolation of being openly gay in a world that still judged, the small victories and the losses. I shared the terror of disappointing my family, the image of Elena's hurt face haunting me. "Love isn't about fitting a mold," Santiago said softly, his hand covering mine briefly. "It's about being honest enough to live it." That conversation unlocked something inside me. The next days blurred with reflection. I met Elena for coffee, my hands shaking as I tried to explain the growing distance without full truth yet. She sensed it, her eyes filling with worry. "Is there someone else?" she asked. I couldn't lie completely, mumbling about needing space to figure myself out. The hurt in her voice cut deep, but I knew delaying would only worsen it. Santiago supported me through texts and calls, never demanding, always reminding me of my strength. We spent an afternoon at the beach, walking silently at first before opening up more. He revealed a past betrayal by a close friend who had outed him prematurely, teaching him caution with trust. I confessed my fears of losing everything: job, family, the life I had built. "You're already losing yourself by hiding," he pointed out gently. His insight hit hard, sparking the first real internal battle. At work, I threw myself into projects to distract, but colleagues noticed my distraction. One late night, I drove to Santiago's apartment uninvited, knocking softly. He opened the door in sweats, surprise turning to concern as he pulled me inside. We talked until dawn, the rain tapping the windows like a heartbeat. "Whatever happens next, I'm here," he promised. That assurance gave me courage to call my sister the next day, testing waters with vague hints about personal struggles. Her response was supportive but cautious, warning of our parents' traditional views. The engagement party arrived like a storm cloud. I attended with Elena, smiling through toasts and photos, but inside I felt like an imposter. Santiago texted encouragement during breaks, his words a lifeline. After the event, Elena and I argued in the car, her tears flowing as she demanded honesty. I admitted the confusion, the attraction to someone else, though not naming Santiago yet. She asked for time and I granted it, driving home alone with a heavy heart. The following week brought more conversations with Santiago, our bond deepening through shared vulnerabilities. He introduced me to a small support group of friends who had walked similar paths, their stories echoing my own doubts and hopes. One member spoke of sacrificing a family business for authenticity, the pain balanced by freedom. I left inspired yet terrified. Elena and I met again, her decision clear. She needed space to heal, and I respected it, returning the ring with apologies that felt inadequate. The breakup spread through family circles quickly, calls flooding in with questions and disappointment. My father's voice on the phone was cold, demanding explanations. I deflected, buying time, but the pressure mounted. Santiago stayed steady, suggesting a weekend getaway to clear my head in the mountains. There, under starlit skies, we sat by a campfire, the conversation turning to future possibilities. "I don't want to rush you," he said, "but I care about you deeply." His honesty mirrored mine, and for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a different life. The internal conflict peaked as family ultimatums arrived via email, my mother pleading for me to reconsider. I confided everything to Santiago one evening at his shop, the weight lifting slightly with each word. His embrace was brief but grounding, a silent promise amid the chaos. The path ahead looked uncertain, filled with potential loss, but the awakening felt irreversible. Betrayal struck when my best friend from college, unaware of the full story, leaked details to my family during a casual call. "Mateo's acting different, maybe seeing someone new," he had said innocently, but it reached my father within hours. The confrontation came via video call, his face stern on the screen. "Is this true? Are you throwing away your future for some phase?" The accusation stung, mixing with my mother's silent tears in the background. I tried explaining the emotional journey, the confusion turning to clarity, but words failed against their shock and anger. They hung up after demanding I seek counseling, the silence afterward deafening. Santiago found me at the shop that night, pacing the floor. He listened as I poured out the hurt, his own experiences with family rejection providing quiet parallels. They may not understand now, but you can't live for them, he advised. The next days brought isolation. Elena's family cut contact politely, citing disappointment, and work suffered as I missed deadlines from the mental fog. A colleague whispered rumors, adding to the paranoia. Santiago suggested I stay with him temporarily for support, his apartment becoming a refuge where we cooked simple meals and talked late. He shared stories of his early days post-coming out, the friends who stood by him through similar storms. One evening, his ex reached out unexpectedly, stirring old tensions. The call revealed lingering resentment from their breakup, and Santiago handled it with grace, but it highlighted his own scars of misunderstanding. I felt the weight of potential similar pain if things progressed. Family pressure escalated with a visit from my sister, her plea emotional. "Dad's talking about cutting ties if you don't fix this." The threat loomed, forcing a choice between heritage and self. Santiago and I drove to the coast for perspective, waves crashing as we walked. "Sacrifice doesn't mean losing everything," he said. "It means prioritizing what's real." His words resonated, but the fear of losing my parents gnawed. Back in the city, a heated argument with my father over the phone ended in him disowning the confusion, his voice breaking my resolve temporarily. I withdrew, skipping our usual meetups, but Santiago respected the space, checking in gently. Betrayal deepened when a cousin posted veiled comments online about family values, tagging me indirectly. The online backlash from extended relatives added public shame, testing my fragile courage. Santiago countered with quiet strength, inviting me to a community event where stories of resilience inspired. There, surrounded by others who had faced rejection, I began to see patterns of survival and growth. Elena sent a final message wishing me well, closure that eased one burden but opened others. The crisis peaked during a solo night when doubts overwhelmed. Santiago arrived unannounced with food, sensing my spiral. We talked through the night, his patience a balm. "You've already sacrificed the old version of yourself," he reminded. "Now choose the one you want to become." The conversation marked a shift, turning pain into resolve. Work offered a promotion contingent on stability, subtly pressuring conformity. I declined quietly, prioritizing honesty over advancement. Family silence stretched weeks, amplifying loneliness, but Santiago's consistent presence filled gaps. A minor betrayal from a coworker who spread office gossip forced me to confront professional consequences, leading to a candid talk with HR about personal matters. Support came unexpectedly from a team member who shared their own story, lightening the load. Through it all, the bond with Santiago strengthened, built on shared understanding and mutual respect. The emotional toll tested us both, but each hurdle revealed deeper connection. As the month closed, I stood at a crossroads, the sacrifices weighing heavy, yet the path forward clearer. The turning point arrived during a family reconciliation attempt at my parents' home in San Diego. I drove there alone, Santiago's encouraging text on my phone. "Be true to you." My mother hugged me first, tears flowing, while my father remained guarded. Over coffee, I explained the journey from confusion to acceptance, the love that had awakened through honest connection. They listened, questions tentative at first, then deeper. My father admitted his fear stemmed from his own upbringing, not hatred. It wasn't full approval, but a crack in the wall, a start toward understanding. Back in Los Angeles, I shared the progress with Santiago over dinner at his place. His pride in my courage shone, and we talked about building something real without rushing. The relationship grew naturally, marked by walks, shared laughs, and quiet support during tough days. Work stabilized as I focused on authentic campaigns, even incorporating diversity themes that felt personal. Family calls increased gradually, my sister bridging gaps with updates. One weekend, Santiago joined me for a low-key visit home, his presence disarming my parents' initial stiffness. Conversations flowed about life, not labels, planting seeds of acceptance. Challenges lingered, like societal stares or old friends' awkwardness, but each one strengthened our resolve. A final test came when Elena's new partner reached out indirectly, stirring brief jealousy, but I released it, wishing her happiness. Santiago and I faced it together, our communication deepening the trust. Months later, as we sat in the barbershop after closing, the same chair from our first meeting now symbolic, I reflected on the growth. The man who had leaned back that day no longer existed, replaced by someone who embraced his truth. Santiago smiled, reminding me how far we had come. Our story wasn't perfect, filled with scars and lessons, but it was ours, built on courage and connection. Friends and family slowly integrated, the community around us expanding. I realized the sacrifices had led to a fuller life, one where love between men could flourish openly. The journey taught that identity isn't fixed but evolves through honesty and support. Standing beside Santiago now, watching the city lights, I knew the choices had been worth it. What began with a simple command had become a lifetime of understanding. Is it possible for one unexpected moment of connection to redefine your entire sense of self and relationships? Or are some identities truly unchangeable? True or false?